So welcome to part 2 of our Programming in a Pandemic series. Who knew that we were going to be needing a series for such a thing? When we talked about this in the spring, I know, at least I was thinking, oh, a couple months and we'll all be sort of back to doing what we do. And here we are. So entering into a school year is going to present some new issues and opportunities for non-formal educators as well as formal educators. So this is a conversation that I feel will probably be ongoing for at least the short term. So I would like to welcome back our panelists who were kind enough to join us again. And we will begin kind of doing the round robin style of question and answer so that we can hear a little bit about their summer program experiences, successes, learning moments, as well as what their plans are for school programs and trying to stay viable in the coming year. So some quick introductions. We have Daniel Auer with Woldemar Nature Center, which is in Lansing. Ashley Smith from who is the Nature Center Supervisor and Naturalist at Farmington Hills Nature Center. And I should have said Dan is the Program Director at Woldemar. We have Dennis Laidler, who is the Education Curator at Potter Park Zoo in Lansing. Brittany Burgess, the Program Manager at the U of M Museum of Natural History. And Kevin Freely, who's Education Services Manager with the State of Michigan DNR. So kind of a nice well-rounded group here. I know that you all offer different kinds of programming, and all of you offer programming that has a strong outdoor and environmental education component. So that's why we're having the conversation. So welcome back, and thank you for being here. So we're going to jump right in and kind of think back to the conversation we had in the spring, which was very much about how are you going to run summer programs in this COVID era? And so I know two of you, Dan and Ashley, both ran in-person summer camp programs. So why don't we go ahead and start with that idea? And so Dan, I'm going to go right to you. What would you say were your greatest successes from your summer camp program in the midst of this pandemic?
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Some of it was just doing it, I think, was the greatest success. Luckily having the support of the staff that I was working with, our board of directors, and then our members that all helped us decide that it was the right decision to make and that we could and do it. And, once this whole started and we were in lockdown, my youth program coordinator and I really sat down. She has been working in camps just as long as I have, and she was new to Woldemar. She started just a few weeks before we went into lockdown, so she didn't really have an idea of what Woldemar was until we all started working from home. So we had plenty of time to really think about what this might look like and kind of just following the science. And then finally, like 2 weeks before we could operate a camp, Laura, the licensing through Michigan, finally gave us our guidelines for how to safely operate. And so we were able to look at what we already had created for our safety protocols and mesh it with what the state of Michigan was requiring. And luckily, most of the work we had done had already matched up. So we were very thankful that we had that jump start, and we just were able to dig into that, look at what we needed to do to be legally and safely able to offer a summer camp. And then we took that and looked at, okay, now what do we need to do to make sure this is an enjoyable experience for the kids? And we were able to adapt our programming, and we were able to do it safely. We did 7 weeks of our program, and now that it's been 2 weeks since the last camp, we can say we did it safely without COVID. So I'm very thankful to say that. And really, it just came down to, crystal clear, black and white, right out of what we were expecting from the parents. So they knew that going in. There were no surprises. And I think that allowed us to be, to work with the right families who were, being able to understand what those restrictions were going to be, and being partners in the safety, because we could control what was going on at Woldemar. We could have all the safety and health policies in place, but what was going on outside of our control still affected our program. So I think that all mixed up into great success, and there's just a whole lot of luck in there too.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty awesome that your families were that cooperative, because there is a huge trust factor there, right? Like,
Absolutely.
we're going to take the kids on, and we're going to trust that you guys are doing the right thing. So
yes, and we did have some parents that once we got going, they had some scares, and they took the appropriate measures to get tested and keep their kids away until they knew what was going on, and they were upfront and honest with us through that entire process. So it was really great.
that's wonderful. Super exciting news. And did you, how was your participation numbers different compared to a normal summer?
Yeah, so normally we have a capacity around 70 to 80 campers, and we normally do groups of 10 in our program. So that's what we were mandated to do through state of Michigan. So the group numbers felt very comfortable for us with 10. And we kept our capacity at 50, and that was based on our capacity of indoor space in the event of needing it and being able to socially distance in an inside space. We had 2 rainy days where we had to be inside for part of the day. And then the other rainy days, we had a policy where we canceled. So that was just one day we canceled throughout the summer, but the rest of the time was completely outside. So most of our weeks were right around 30 or 40 campers. A few weeks we were around the high 40s, but yeah, so good numbers. Just around 50% of what we normally do, and about 50% of our normal income that we would see.
Right. Yeah, that's the flip side of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's awesome, and I'm glad the weather was so cooperative for you as well, to be able to keep the kids outside. That's where we want them anyways. Wonderful. How about you, Ashley? Did you have the same sort of success?
Yeah, I mean, what Daniel was describing sounded really similar to what we had in the beginning, just putting together that plan, making sure that it was very kind of trying to account for any unknowns that could come up or any what ifs. And then obviously communicating that with the parents. That's one of the things that we want to continue with camp, even if COVID's not an issue next summer, is that those communication methods that we started with COVID was really great, and parents seemed to be really on top of it. So that was helpful. We had similar numbers to Daniel. We had 4 separate camps in my facility with 10 kids in each camp. And then we had a couple specialty camps that were just outside of the nature center, an art focused camp and an archery camp. Those also had 10 campers each, and our participation, I mean, they all filled all summer. We even added an extra week of camp because I don't know why, we just were thinking we were too lucky, and we decided to add an extra week. I was like crossing my fingers that we would make it. But we did, so no COVID cases, so yay. So I think that's one of our biggest successes. But I think along with that was just being able to see how much the kids appreciated having that summer experience, having that time spent with each other, and the families and parents, all the comments they had. We did weekly surveys with parents just to get their feedback, not only on like how we were handling safety and communication, but also like the quality of the camps, and nothing but like positive feedback. I think it's the most positive surveys we've ever had in a summer. So that was awesome. In addition to camp, the Nature Center also was offering in-person programming. And with licensing, we had to make sure everything was very controlled as far as like the restrooms and our facility. We couldn't have the public mixing with our campers at any point. So the Nature Center actually had to be closed to the public during camp. So we decided that we were going to offer Nature Center appointment hours where folks could be guided in by a naturalist, so we would know that there would be no mixing with our campers in the common areas, and then bring them straight back to the Nature Center in groups of 8 or less, and they could book like a 45-minute appointment time slot. and there was a fee. It was a $10 fee. And they got some activity bins and things when they came, but they had the nature center all to themselves. There weren't any other families there during that time. And I wasn't sure how well that was going to go, and it was really well received. Families just really liked having that control to be able to have the nature center all to themselves and not have to worry about who was going to be there or if it was going to be crowded. Knowing that it was disinfected between each appointment and all those things, I think also put people at ease. So they were full almost every day, to the point where I was under scheduled those appointment times, thinking that, oh, this is going to be fine. It's just an appointment, a family coming in, and I could be here. It was really like a lot of work, just because we had to disinfect after each one and letting them in and making sure they weren't mixing with their campers. But I think that was also a really big success. We are going to continue our appointments through the fall, even though camp is over, because having that control, I think for us and also for our visitors also was like really great. So we're going to keep doing that. And then we offered some other in-person programs too, a fishing day and a garden tea party and a naturals program once a week in the evenings that other kids participated in, not our campers. It was a different group. And those were all really great. So talk to Daniel. We made it through. So now I just hope we continue to have that through the fall, because we're going to be doing a lot more in person in the fall too. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't ask Dan this, but when you had your campers, did you have them wear masks, or since they were outside, was that not?
Yeah, so we had a policy in place that how it was stated that during pickup and drop off, they would have their mask on. Anytime they were inside, so if they were like using the bathroom, for the most part was the only time they were inside. And then anytime we had a group focused activity where social distancing would be challenging, which kept it pretty clear with the expectations. And then later in the summer, there was a change through an executive order requiring that indoor mask mandate. And we had already had that in place, so we didn't have to reteach that. I think what we're seeing is kids are extremely resilient to this, and the kids are not the ones complaining about the masks. It's just become part of what they're used to. And we found having just set times when they're expected to have it on, and then them knowing when it was going to be off, and just having a strict and less wiggle room equaled success.
Yeah.
And so that was what we decided to do, and our parents knew that going in, and it wasn't for everybody, and they knew that, and so it helped with the buy-in.
Good. It's another one of those examples where adults should learn from children, right? Like, it's really not that hard. Same thing for you, I assume, Ashley. That was kind of the similar line.
It was the same. We had to wear masks a little bit more because some of our camps were had some indoor things a little more than all outside. Like our older kids camp was inside more for some reason. I don't know. Our art camp was inside a little bit more, but all the camps were outside as much as possible so they could have their masks off. And then when they were inside, they had them on. So yeah, but we didn't have any issues with every once in a while there were kids that you had to remind, like, hey, mask up, like we're inside, and they were really right away. Oh, there weren't any big behavioral issues with mask wearing that a lot of people joke about on like Facebook and stuff. We didn't encounter any of that. I don't know about you, Daniel, but the kids took it. They were very responsible and amazing. So
that's really great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So Kevin, I know that you were anticipating, you were trying to decide at the beginning of the summer, was the DNR going to enforce masks in visitor centers and things like that? So I'm segueing to you now. What was the summer programming like for?
Well, because of the staffing issue where our 10 visitor centers were told we could just have the one full-time employee and no other staff. So we had a choice early on of either keeping the doors open to visitor centers or somehow doing programming out in the woods and not having the doors open. And we knew that really wasn't going to fly. So programming really took a back seat. It was handling the massive crowds. I know everybody's heard about the incredible crowds this year. And we have all kinds of records being set. The recreational passport, which you have to buy, of course, when you go into a park, or you buy with your license every year with your car. In July, that's 19% over last July. And hunting and fishing licenses right now are, for the year, are up over anything they've been in the last 5 years. So people are clawing and scratching to get outside. That's the upside. The downside is, they all show up. So, and it's amazing how many people have come outdoors really for the first time. We've had more incidents, rescues, dumb things happen because so many people have never camped before, have never been on a trail before. So managing for all of that took precedence, the multitude of crowds at our visitor centers, which didn't open until very late June. That took precedence over any program. We did start to do some programming at the very end of August with some clinics with just 20 people all wearing masks, sitting 6 feet apart, that sold out. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I felt it was sort of like, for those of us who enjoy those outdoor spaces all the time, it was sort of irritating.
Definitely.
That all the people are now like out in our spaces, but at the same time, that's what we're all about, is to get people outside. So it's sort of a mixed bag. But I guess that's where, we have to remind people how to be outside. So that's part of the story, I suppose. So Brittany and Dennis, I know that you both did not do in-person programming this summer. And I know, Brittany, you had a pretty strong virtual summer program planned. So can you tell us how that went?
Yeah, so we did 6 weeks of a virtual summer camp, and it was a little slow going. We also got approval a little bit late, and so the momentum picked up towards the end of the summer, but then we were kind of done. Also, I think parents and kids were a little hesitant to sign up being virtual, and then they participated, and then we would repeat. They would add on another week and another week. And they started to enjoy it. We did 2 age groups. We were originally going to do 3, but we ended up condensing. We started with completed 1st grade up through 6th grade. We just wanted them to be a little bit more independent. We did have a couple kindergartners participate, but we just were told the parents you might have to help them a little bit more. And we did 1 hour live session. We offered some independent activities for them to do in the afternoon. We offered what we called a counselor corner, where they could hop on and ask questions and get help, or just do the activities with the counselor. And then a wrap up towards the end of the day to give some accountability, how you have that closing of camp, to prepare them for the next day, and they could show off the things they made. We did a lot of games. We turned a lot of things into virtual games. We did reverse charades. We did for the animal week, we did a camouflage PowerPoint where they found the animal. We tried to do different yoga activities. We did dinosaur yoga and space yoga. And we were just adapting everything to add in some sort of movement. And the kids loved it. They actually really loved reverse charades. And when asked to play over and over again, we heard time and time again that it was age appropriate and engaging from the parents. So they really actually enjoyed it. We provided the materials to the kids for the activities, which the parents said they appreciated. We tried to prep everything as much as possible to make it easy. We recorded a bunch of videos, which required a bunch of prep. That took way more time than I thought it would take. And so we provided as these independent activities. We really wanted the kids to be able to do them on their own without parent help. And we heard that a lot of them could do it. And so I think we did the videos so well that they wouldn't come to Counselor Corner because they didn't need the help. So we had about half of our spaces. We limited the sessions to 15. The sessions didn't start filling up until the last week. So if we would have had more sessions, it might have filled, but it was a little bit slow going, but they started picking up towards the end.
So. Word got around. And I bet those kids are rocking virtual school right now because they've already, got some of that down.
We had some kids who got really creative. We tried to be pretty strict about our setting up of Zoom, but some things slid through, and so they would change their names to like host or co-host, which would confuse our counselors, or attempt to change their name. And some were very, but it was great to see the kids chatting with each other, and they really enjoyed interacting with other kids because they haven't seen kids. So
Good. So overall, you'd call it a success.
yeah, we didn't lose money. We made not as much as in-person camp would have, but we made some money. So
That's a win. Excellent. Okay, Dennis, how about you? I know that you didn't have camp at the zoo, but what kind of what was offered over the summer?
Not much. Pretty much our whole education team was furloughed for the whole summer. So,
Okay.
But we are we are doing a few things for the fall. So, one of the things we decided, realistically, with our situation, most of us probably won't be going back until spring unless there's a vaccine and has a miracle cure in a hurry. So, but we have a couple programs that are geared for underserved audiences, and we didn't want those audiences, especially in a time like this, to miss out. So our Falconers is a monthly program for special needs families or that have any member of the special needs. So normally they're a 3-hour week themed event once a month. The zoo opens early for special hours if they need to have the zoo pretty much to themselves. We don't charge for those programs. So, but with the current constraints, we did engage our team member that does our community engagement. She's back at the zoo working again. So she sent out surveys and things to the Falconers family. We have several hundred families that have come over the last couple of years. So asking them what they felt comfortable with and with the constraints that we'd have to do. And so we're gonna, I think the 17th, a Thursday, we're gonna, of this month, we're gonna do our first one we've done since March, I think. So, but there's limits to what we can do. Some of the people, because of their challenges, aren't able to wear a mask. So how do we deal with families that have a member that doesn't wear a mask? And so we're doing it when the zoo is closed, so we only have to worry about that group and their situation. So, and then we are an institution that actually hosts a high school class taught. We have a staff member that teaches a high school class. It's a zoo management and animal science class. And it's, Becky's doing a great job, but it's challenged because we have anywhere from 10 to 12 different school districts represented, and they all have different situations. But
Right.
Hers is, we're able to do it primarily in person, which is important because that's a lot of reason they want to take the class, because it's at the zoo. But because we're not doing normal programming, our large community room is big enough that she can have 20 students in that room and still have her entire class in there basically, and still have good social distancing. I think I talked with her and she said starting tomorrow, she has a few students because of like a cough, so they're going to be at home for a week or two. So she's going to be still in person, but also Zooming the lectures and stuff live, so the students that are home can see those. And then this fall, we're looking at modified versions of our Halloween and Christmas events as far as fundraising and stuff goes.
Okay. I was wondering about those. Do you feel that you had good visitation at the zoo over the summer? Just people coming through?
Oh yeah, early on, we went up till recently, we were doing timed entries, so that really helped. We were able to, a lot of times we would be at max numbers, which is what we want, obviously. Most people were pretty good. We had some days or some people that didn't want to follow guidelines, but most of the time. Sometimes in the more popular exhibits, when you have the baby rhino out, nobody wants to leave and move along, so we have to worry about people bunching up a little bit. But overall, that part's went really well. It's just that without school groups coming to us and because of restrictions on taking animals off site because of COVID, we're sort of hamstrung on doing the kind of programming that we typically would do. I guess the other thing that we're looking at, that we're going to be doing is we're going to be, it's sort of an opportunity to do this, is we're looking at our entire, basically doing a total analysis of all the conservation education that we do and the formats that we use and the structure. And we'll be looking at making some very significant but positive changes to be more efficient with our resources going forward.
Yeah, I think that's, everyone's in that boat, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we segue into kind of thinking about what you know, kind of the direction you were leading us there is with school programming. Bill, is there any questions in the chat that are specific to camp that we should cover right now before we move on?
There was one interesting question. Brittany, how do you feel about how much work you guys put into your virtual camp this year compared to a regular year? Was it more or less or the same?
It was more in other areas. It definitely required a lot of prep. We had to we recorded a bunch of videos. We also all had a crash course in video editing and filming and all of those best practices, which I had never done, most of my staff had never done. Luckily, they're all college students, which they're pretty quick at learning. And I also had a couple staff members who helped out who had video editing experience. We were lucky enough also to get an Ann Arbor Kiwanis Foundation grant, which helped us with paying for a lot of the prepping. And then also we were able to give scholarships to kids in Washtenaw County. And we gave like 13 scholarships, like full scholarships, so they could participate. It was definitely harder, or especially my staff found it was harder to instruct and especially do some of the crafts live when they couldn't just reach through the screen and like help the kid. So they really had to use their words a lot more and show. And some of them got really creative with their camera setups and showing and helping do the crafts. But I made sure all the counselors had the same materials so that they could show the kids. But it was interesting because we didn't have as much of the behavioral issues. And we didn't have to deal with that as much. We weren't with the kids as much. There were a couple with some of the older kids bantering. We did have like some issues with, there was one instance with a girl who got lemon juice in her eye while on a virtual program, and there's not much you can do. So there were some interesting challenges, but it was definitely more prep. We also were limited with the staff that could come into the museum. So I ended up doing a lot of the prepping of kits, and I discovered I'm not Amazon and I'm not good at that. And making sure that you pack these kits, and sometimes you were only packing 15 to 20, but it was still so hard to like make sure and double check. And so that was, I was working on Saturdays to do parents would do a curbside drop off and curbside pickup and come pick up the kids. So it was definitely more prep, and usually I would have pawned stuff off on the counselors more, but I ended up doing more, which is fine. I got my hands dirty.
Yeah. Well, that's probably definitely true for teachers right now too. The prep is that and attendance, that takes like a whole day just to do attendance. What did you have to add to that, Dan?
We also did a very small virtual camp just to see if we could do it and what it would look like. And we had a counselor who had just graduated with her teaching degree and wanted to get that experience. And so we were able to kind of hand it over to her, and she did a great job. Brittany and I, it sounds like we had the very, very similar when it came to numbers and the buy-in for it. I think we were kind of competing with a lot of heavy hitters that were offering really quality programming that had this online presence for a really long time. So we kept it really focused to Lansing, and I think that was helpful. We also provided some activities that could only be done at Woldemar, so they could come on the weekends or something. But yes, I also spent a lot of time making sure the parents were picking up their kits and tracking down the kids that needed to pick it up and all that. And for the number of kids we were working with, it was more work than an in-person camp.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah.
Wouldn't think that, like even with just classroom teaching, just feels like you're always working. So,
Also, I will say that we always had to have 2 counselors on every live Zoom call. And so it was just more expensive that way. I ended up, and a couple of full-time staff members ended up stepping in, and we made the second role like monitoring the chat and letting people in from the waiting room and helping look for kids raising their hand. But still, some staff were better at it than others, but having that expense of two people per, that's not normally how we would structure our camp. We'd have 1 counselor for 9 kids. So it was more expensive that way too.
right. All right. Well, so now the challenge is we've got different districts or types of schools that are running school in different ways. Some that are entirely online, some that are in person. I know there are some districts that are trying hybrid versions. So let's think now about your school programs and how you're trying to continue to keep them relevant and to make them accessible for all of these different formats for school. So Kevin, just so you don't get too complacent there, what are you guys doing? I know the DNR has been working hard. So what's school programming looking like for you guys?
So we're doing like a total 180. We have moved our people's cheese, the sausage, the crackers. I think a few are still talking to me, but our 10 visitor centers around the state are used to hosting about 60,000 kids for school programs in a year with school buses and field trips. And we don't anticipate anywhere near that this year. I mean, we're getting a handful of calls. We, because we're the state, we don't have a lot of those nice little communities like Woldemar or Ashley at Farmington Hills or all the other nation or the zoo or whatever. So it's a broader context. People bring their kids on field trips to a lot of our visitor centers, 100 miles. So that's just not going to happen this year. So we had that feeling way back in spring. So we started when our staff wasn't busy being a monitor and a educator and a custodian and everything else they had to do when we were open. They were building virtual programming. So this fall, we're going to roll out next Monday, Nature at School. So it's a kind of a collaboration. We did Nature at Home. We created way back in the spring for parents to have things to do. This is all online, face-to-face. Our interpreters will come to classrooms across the state and present programs on various topics. And we've been working on that all summer long. And it has been the biggest challenge since I've been at the department. So, but it's coming, it's right around the corner, so we're ready for it.
How are you making schools and districts aware of it? Like, what's your plan for that?
Well, we've got a huge marketing thing that you'll see Monday. In fact, some of you, if you're followers of DNR and Mayo, you're going to get really sick of it because between MSTA, Mayo, Facebook, listservs, if you're on any of our, Sam in the Classroom listservs, ANR listservs, Project Wild listservs, you're going to get hit over and over again that we have these slots are opening and to fill. And so we did a video that we're going to roll out Monday where all of our interpreters do a quick snippet of what they're, a sample of their program. But we put a ton of time into it, from surveying teachers to find out if you had a DNR person come to your school, what would you want them to talk about? We started with that. We got the expertise of our interpreters, their top few things. We got DNR messaging. So we had all these aligned columns that we matched up to create these programs. And then we created pre and post visit materials. We've got Kahoot pre and post questions for quizzes for teachers. So it was a lot of work, and it's probably 98% done now. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. Very cool. So Ashley, let's swing back around to you. What what do school programs look like for you right now? Are you anticipating in-person school groups coming, or are you planning a heavier virtual thing or traveling naturalist? What's your plan?
So Kevin definitely was right when he said that, you know, we have these like small communities that we're able, small is a relative term, but you know, we have these communities that we can connect with. So that's where we decided to put most of our effort is into the Farmington Public School District and working with them directly on what their needs are. So, you know, anything from like surveying teachers, but really what's working best for us right now is working with a handful of teachers that work throughout the district. So for example, they have like a STEM coordinator that's like district-wide staff. And so she's been really helpful in letting us know like what the schools can do, what they need, because Farmington Hills is fully remote. So they're even kind of at this point, so early on, I feel like this might change, but they're not even really allowing any activities on their schoolyard. So for example, if a teacher is doing like an astronomy program and wants his students to meet in the schoolyard and do some like sky watching outside, they can't even do that. So what we're really wanting to focus on is being like the in-person resource for the school, whether that's at their schoolyard or at Heritage Park or the municipal park that's closest to them or whatever it may be, or even in their backyard. But we really want to be a place where the students can come and have some kind of in-person experience because the schools aren't able to give that to them at all. So right now, that's what we're in the process of focusing on. We really aren't doing any virtual programming at all. And that was a decision we made early on, not just with schools, but even with like public programs, their camps, anything. We just felt like the virtual programming, I guess, market or field was just really flooded with resources for teachers, which is awesome, and parents and, you know, families, which is really great. But we just decided, being the small nature center that we are, and we had limited resources when it came to anything virtual, that we were really going to put our efforts into in person. So that's what we're working to be for the schools, is like that in-person go-to for them. And so those programs are still kind of in the works, you know, based on like some of our old programming that we did before, but then customizing it to what the teacher needs, what they want their students to be doing, you know, for their lessons if they come to the nature center. So anyway, working closely with our district is really what we're focused.
That's great. So if there was a school that, like a private school that was in person, would they still be able to bring a group out to you?
Yeah, so we've done a couple outreach programs to schools that are doing in person, just in their schoolyard, so just outside. So we didn't even set foot into the school. We just were we were led right back to the schoolyard and did a program for them in small group, and we wore masks, and the kid, you know, we were outside, distance, all that. So we anticipate maybe being able to do a little bit more of that while the weather stays relatively mild. And then, you know, see where that leads, if schools are going to start coming out to us in the winter time. We've only gotten maybe one school that's interested in coming to the nature center at this point. And usually we have school groups coming every day, you know, in the fall. So it's going to be a big change for us, but we decided to really expand our homeschool nature program that we offer, and our nature preschool. So we're doing preschool 4 days a week and homeschool 3 days a week. And then we're offering like a junior naturalist program on the weekends. So we just really expanded the programs that we already had because we knew we'd have a lot more time on the schedule, I guess, and more room in our facility to like house those programs if we're not having to also have field trips with 100+ kids here like we normally do. So that's been going really well. Most of those programs are already full. They start next week. So we'll still be really busy even though we don't have the schools coming, but we really want to be there for the schools too and try to do what's going to be best for, you know, what their students need right now. So.
Right. Yeah, normally by now, if you're a teacher and you haven't booked your fall field trip at the nature centers, you're not getting in. So
I know, yeah.
That's a whole different thing.
We've gotten like 0 calls. Well, I shouldn't say 0, but not very many at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Does a lot of that sound similar to what you're doing, Dan?
Yes. We also made the same decision as Ashley that we weren't going to focus on virtual. It was the staffing issue, I think, is our biggest. And I think back into the summer, I think that was probably one of our biggest struggles, was having enough staff to meet the needs of the programming that we were trying to offer. And that continues into this fall because we lost all of our college students now. So we are focusing on our in-person programming. We luckily were able to partner with the Lansing School District as part of their learning labs, which is like a learning pod. It functions under our camp license, which Laura gave a variance for in the amount of indoor versus outdoor time a camp can have. So we are able to function what we're currently doing under that license. And what we're doing is just offering a safe place for the kids in the Lansing School District to do their virtual learning with educators and supervisors that can make sure that they're logged on at the right time, helping them with some curriculum that they're struggling with, and just being just making sure that we're a resource for our community and being a safe space for them to continue to do their learning if they don't have a parent or guardian at home. Right now, we only have a group of 10, and between myself and our youth program coordinator, we are the only 2 education staff at Woldemar right now, and It is taking the 2 of us to manage that group of 10 to get them when they need to be on their virtual time, helping them with their asynchronous learning. I spent an hour of my time reading to one kid today. And going back a year, I would have never had that opportunity. But as an educator at heart, man, it feels good to be able to sit there and do what I'm passionate about. But hopefully we'll be able to expand that, and we'll be able to, get some more staff hired. That's the people that are looking to, engage with students again in a safe and controlled environment. It's functioning, like we said, with all the safety precautions and protocols from our summer camp program. And we're really looking forward to continuing to meet the needs of our community. We have a waiting list of families, both from the Lansing School District and outside of our district, who want into a program like this. And we're just trying to figure out how we're going to meet that needs with, the staffing that we currently have. We can't bite off more than we can chew. And we realized that real quick this week with that group of 10 that we're working with, that's taking the 2 of us to manage. But yeah, we're hoping that can be something that can continue to sustain the Nature Center financially and programmatically through the rest of the fall and possibly into the winter season. And just continuing to meet the needs of our community. We went straight to the schools and say, what do you need? What can we do for you? It wasn't, vice versa. We knew that they were going to know what they needed most. And luckily Lansing was able to get on it really quick. There's a few other districts we're still talking to, trying to figure out our plans with them. We have other schools, private schools, looking to come out to the Nature Center and want to do programming with us, but we're tied up. Mm-hmm. All of our education staff is tied up right now. So the amount of interest is overwhelmingly positive, and now I just have to find some people to train and work it and help us out. So yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. It probably helped with Lansing that they were one of the, at least around here, one of the first districts to decide to go remote, and then that's where their energy went. So
yes, and they still have a ton of work to do, and the kids have a lot of trying to figure it out, and can't sugarcoat it. It's bumpy and it's rough, and I mean, any educator that's doing remote learning right now will tell you the exact same thing. And yeah, but it's first and foremost, we gotta make sure we're safe and offer an educational experience that's rewarding. And if that's only for 10 kids right now, that's 10 more than we could be before. So we're really excited about just what we're able to offer.
That's great. Okay, Brittany, what is the museum doing for school programs?
So the museum is not open to the public still. We do not have permission to be open yet, and we cannot do any programming in person with minors. So we are doing virtual, we're talking to the school districts. That Ann Arbor Public School District is the largest school district here. They're completely virtual. And so what the teachers around here have told us in the districts, similar with what Ashley said, talking to a STEM coordinator, Ann Arbor School District has a community partnerships coordinator. They also have like their like a science and math coordinator. So we're working with them, and what they need and what their teachers need is asynchronous learning opportunities for the school district here. Wednesday is like a non-virtual day with extra activities. So they're looking for things to fill Wednesdays. So that is where our energy is going right now. And we're also, there's a lot of like the learning pods from parents who are pulling their kids out of school, are looking for opportunities, and homeschool groups that we've never had. Usually our programming requires a minimum of 10. So now we were just discussing today that we have an opportunity to reach homeschool groups or students or families with these asynchronous opportunities. And we're taking a lot of what we were already doing and just going to record them and provide some hands-on activities. We're also looking at we're calling them virtual field trips of our galleries. But the way, and with our virtual summer camp, we've got to play around with some of these testing out of these different program types. So we created Google slideshows that you can create as clickable, like move through gallery. So you can do a picture of a gallery and click on different things, and videos pop up, and we ask questions and do an activity, or so that's how we're kind of doing our virtual field trips, is just using Google. So.
Okay, well, who knew you'd get to be so tech savvy as part of your your programming job. I think we're all learning a lot more about tech right now, so there's something. I know, Dennis, you already kind of talked about what you had going in the way of school programming, but as other people were talking, did anything else pop up for you, or?
No, just that, just like a lot of us, it's frustrating. And I have the opposite problem that Daniel has, is that I have staff, but I can't have them there. So we're limited on what we can do. So we decided to do like I said, focus on the underserved group programming was our priority. So we couldn't do if we could do anything, that was the programming we decided to focus on. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm glad you're doing that. Well, we're getting close to the end here. And some of you sort of already touched on this, but as you've been planning for this year and, kind of as you work through your summer programming, have you established any really valuable partnerships or collaborations that benefit your programming overall? I know that, in the spring when we talked about this, there were some camp associations and other things that were kind of talking you through it. Has anything else popped up that in the way of, groups or organizations or other entities that have been a really valuable resource for you? Kevin, you want to pop on that one?
I still think the biggest strength was actually a group like Mayo, and all the Mayo, whether they're individual Mayo members or all the type of folks on the call, and all these organizations. When we started that Nature at Home page back in the spring, we asked for people to contribute to it, and we had tons of activities and ideas and links, videos, all kinds of stuff that was sent to us by the whole environmental and outdoor ed community. And that website has been phenomenal. We've had 44,000 page views, and people average over 10 minutes every time they go to that page, which is off the chart for viewing online. So that's pretty amazing. And the videos have had over 130,000 views. So all of that, a lot of that stuff was contributed by probably some people on this call. And I would say, so it's that whole statewide environmental ed consortium that's really been, that partnership has been really helpful to us.
That's pretty cool that you're getting that many hits. Amazing. Ashley, what about you? Any important relationships pop up throughout this?
I think for me, one group, we have a nature center, like coalition group for Southeast Michigan. There might be some people on the call. I'm not sure that are part of that, but most of the nature centers that are located within Southeast Michigan, all the way up to like Flint, and I think I'm trying to think of the kind of the radius we're in, but anyone's welcome to join. But anyway, we have seasonal meetings, and so we've been doing Zoom meetings instead of in person. And those have been helpful just to see what in my field, what other nature centers are doing. I know I always enjoy like hearing what Daniel's doing out at Waldemar, because that helps me validate like what some of our decisions have been and what we've been doing. It sounds like we're doing a lot of similar things. But I think for me too, just reaching out, like Kevin said, like individuals, and to talk to them. I know that the week that the nature center opened, I called Christina, who works at the Stage Nature Center, because they had been open the week before us, and just to get a feel for how it had been for them and how it was to open, and just to have that resource. And a lot of the folks that I know are definitely through like our Mayo network, so it's been really valuable to have those connections and be able to reach out to those people. So, and I think that at first you're kind of like, I don't want to bug this person, they're so busy, it's so crazy right now, but every time I have, it's been like such a valuable conversation just to see what they're doing and what worked well, and what they would do different. So
That's great. Yeah, I think people are pretty anxious to share ideas, so that's a good feature.
mm-hmm.
Dan, anything else for you?
Yeah, I would just say I've been so thankful for the generosity of the community and sharing their resources and expertise. And the whole saying "we're all in this together" really has shined through this. And I think that's where the strength of our community has really shown. It's been so powerful, just the amount of sharing that's been going on and resources that have been available. And like Ashley said, if you give somebody a call, they're going to share more with you than you could ever hope for. And it also turns into a nice therapy session with somebody else in your field, where you can just talk through a problem you're having with somebody who understands, or even if you just need to just get it all out for a second, did they just share what the struggles you're going through? And I have sent so many people to the DNR website for things that are just like, help, I need something for my kid to do. And I was like, well, here you go. Here's an entire page full of stuff. Look at all the great work that they're doing. And so that, and the camp world has been really supportive through all of this. With the ACA did a lot of stuff for free and for non-members, which was fantastic. A lot of Michigan camps got together on a call. They were able to get licensing in there, which was really helpful to get to just know what was going on a weekly basis. And then just looking at our educational partners, it has really shown who's really invested in this outdoor and environmental education, because they have stepped up and contact us and say, what do we need to do? How can we still be involved? We're still interested. And all of those partnerships have shined through all of this and realized what's most important.
Pretty great. Brittany, have you uncovered any super valuable resources or groups that you're working with?
I would just say that the last week's Mayo call was super awesome and had so many great resources, and I've already been figuring out how I can implement some with our fall programming. So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then all the other things that the ACA, the camp group, and then I've talked to other science centers and museums about what they're doing for fall. And as we prepare to open to the public, we'll open to the campus community before we open to the public.
Right. How about you, Dennis?
Well, everything that everybody else said, obviously. And then within the zoo and aquarium world, there's a really strong network also. So again, we in our particular situation, we have a lot of similar issues. And so again, shared expertise within educators are educators. Everybody wants to help everybody. So
yeah. And we don't mind if people steal good ideas, right?
exactly.
all going to the same cause. Yeah, my kids started school before I had to start. So I was spying on their Zoom meetings to see how their teachers were doing it. And that's part of it, right? Like we just kind of are all learning as we're doing it. So, and I guess that's kind of what I want to end with. You know, I know there's probably other teachers on this call who are passionate about getting students outside, and in a remote environment, that's a lot harder to do because you don't have control over that. So does anyone have any advice to offer teachers who are in a remote learning situation in terms of, I don't know, just how to get outdoor components built into instruction?
Just ask us.
Yeah.
You said we're ready to share. And we also don't want to, we're busy, but we also don't want to bother you if you're not interested. Sometimes it's hard to know who's willing and able to, because it's a lot right now. So if you're interested, send us an email and we'd be happy to supply you with more than you could ever do.
Awesome.
I think that's true we were talking about, what about the teachers that, you know, aren't comfortable asking to, you know, aren't comfortable figuring out ways to get their students outside. You know, they're just overwhelmed with trying to figure out all the remote learning things that they're dealing with, and they're not factoring in that like these kids are on the computer and they, you know, they need to spend some time outdoors. And so that's why for us, like at the Nature Center, we really wanted to focus on the district as a whole and not individual teachers. We're obviously working with individual teachers too, but we really want to make it something where teachers can feel empowered to give their kids resources and things to do outdoors. So just like Dan said, like the Nature Center wants to help with all of that, because we don't want a teacher, just because it's outside their comfort zone, to have the students suffer, you know, and not have that outside time built into their learning. It's super important, more than ever now, I think.
Yeah, more than ever. That's definitely what I'm experiencing with my own kids, who get done with online learning and then immediately want to play video games because that's how they interact with their friends. So it's like,
I know, it's crazy.
It's a nightmare. So it's a lot to manage. But you all sound like you're doing amazing work and doing the best with what you've been dealt. And I think I just want to emphasize the importance of this community, and like Daniel and others have mentioned, like you really see the value of the relationships that you built and what people expect. And that's, I guess sometimes that's what something like a pandemic can make crystal clear, right? Okay, so this is a smaller group this time around. The chat's not really flowing like it was the first time, but Bill, is there anything else that popped up in there that we should bring up right now before we finish?
I think it was just a quick question about the pods at Woldemar. Do those kids get some nature programming as well, or are they just there for the academic work?
Yeah, so currently, because of the schedule that Lansing is doing, we are helping them with their learning the entire day, and we don't get to supply any extra outdoor programming yet. We're really hoping that once things settle in a bit, we can get all of that synchronous learning in the morning or afternoon, which then allows us to do some of our programming. So that's the goal. That's what we're trying to get towards. I think there's just a lot of ironing out a lot of creases that needs to happen right now, and we're being very patient with them. Some of the other schools that we have talked to are showing some interest in, you know, that synchronous versus asynchronous time, and then having us deliver a lot of that outdoor time, getting them to run around, stretch their legs, get out their wiggles. So yes, not yet, but yes, we'll get there. I'm sure of it.
Awesome. Okay, so before we sign off, just again, thank you, each of you, for being here, for sharing your expertise and your ideas and your concerns and your successes. I imagine the conversation will continue as we continue to navigate something that's new to all of us. We can only hope that 2020 is unique in that as we move out of it, we will, you know, get to resume some of our normal things that we do, which is really all about bringing the outdoors to kids, and adults really. So just know that Mayo is working hard to provide opportunities for professional development to still happen, and to make sure that you're all getting some good ideas and resources. And stay tuned, because we will continue to try to bring you some programming throughout the fall to make up for what we missed at our conference. So thank you all for being here, and enjoy the rest of your night, and stay tuned.